What's up, my fellow emo, pop punk, metalcore music lovers? Matrix here, and you were locked into the Matrix Music Review Podcast, the only place to get your alt-rock scene music fix, and the best place to find your new favorite band. We are here today with one of my favorite episodes to do. It is our mid-year best of podcast. I'm going to talk about all of the best things that have happened so far this year. We're right a little bit past the midway point now. And we've had a pretty serious year in terms of what has gone on in this alt-rock scene, in the metal scene, in the pop-punk scene. It has been an insane year so far. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about some of the top tours, some of the top albums, some of the top tracks, and a little bit of what are we looking for at the end of this year? What's to come? What are we really excited for as we get into the end of this year? As always, the link for everything you need from me is in the description of this episode. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Matrix Music Review. Instagram is the best way to stay up to date on everything that I have going on. That's where I'm the most active. I post a bunch of tour announcements as they come out. I post different songs, playlist updates, all of that on there. Speaking of the playlist, head on over to Spotify and save the Control-Alt-Save 25 playlist to your library. It is updated every week or every other week with new music from the scene, music that you hear me talk about during the podcast, and music that I've just been listening to a lot lately. All the new stuff is over there on that. If you're listening on Apple Music or Spotify, leave a 5-star review, leave me a comment, let me know how I'm doing. Make sure you head on over to YouTube and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I would love to be able to start getting some video content out there, but I need subscribers in order to be able to do that. So head over to YouTube and subscribe at that channel, Matrix Music Review. With that, let's just jump right into it. We're going to start talking about the year so far in terms of live shows. I've been able to catch a bunch of shows this year, and the first thing that we got to talk about, I think, is be crazy not to talk about it, is the fact that Warped Tour was back this year. As this episode drops, we'll be leading right into Long Beach. I believe it'll be next weekend, depending on when this drops, but I was able to attend the first date of Warped Tour in Washington, D.C., and I had a great time. I really did. There were so many bands, so many opportunities to see people, so many opportunities to interact with the bands, and it was really a good time for me. I know I've seen a few things about how it's more of a festival than it is a Warped Tour, and I think that's something that we just have to kind of get used to. There is no physically possible way for Warped Tour to remain what it was back in the day because, unfortunately, the economy has changed, the state of the world has changed, and it's just not plausible for that to be a thing anymore. But I think for the prices that we got this year, at least if you got your passes early, $100 for a 2-day pass is not all that bad when you consider the lineup that they had and you consider the different opportunities that you had to experience that there. For me, I know I come out of Warped Tour with an eye towards next year, and when I talked about it on the podcast that we did about the Warped Tour wrap-up, right after that, they announced the next dates, and I got my pass. I'm excited for next year. Yes, I bought a pass, sight unseen, lineup unseen, but it doesn't really matter to me because it's all about the feeling that I had when I was there. It's all about the community that goes there, and it's something that as many times as I can, as often as I can, as long as I'm physically able to, I'm going to attend that tour, that festival, whatever you want to call it, because it is definitely something that is special to our scene. After the festival dates, we talk a little bit about some of the individual tours that I was able to catch so far this year. I was able to catch the Plot and Use tour. That was a fantastic tour, and Landon Tours is definitely somebody that is one of the hot names in the scene right now. Whether it's being featured on a new track from Prompts this year with Stranger, that is one of my favorite tracks so far, or whether that is being a producer on other albums that have come out this year. There's a lot of Landon Tours influence in the scene this year, and I think that's fantastic. And I can't wait to see what Plot does as this year goes on as well. Was able to catch the Paleface Swiss tour, and you'll hear me talk about them a little bit later in this episode, and the vocal talent that was on display there, whether it was the growls, the snarls, the gurgles, whatever the hell you want to call it, those are incredible to see live, and it's amazing to see that there is that type of talent there, and it's not just all artificially generated in the studio. Getting to see Red Jumpsuit Apparatus in 408 with Distance to Dawn in my hometown was really cool. It was one of those shows where I had never been able to see Red Jumpsuit Apparatus back in the day, so to be able to catch them in a smaller, more intimate venue was really cool. 408's another one to be able to catch in that small environment was really cool because these are bands that are either kind of resurfacing in their career or really just jump-starting their career. So seeing them in a small room like the Wrecker where I got them is probably not going to happen very frequently. So the ability to be up close and personal with them was great. And I was able to discover a really cool new local band in Distance to Dawn that I've been able to follow a little bit more as the years gone on. I had a stretch that was unlike any other over, a few weeks where we got to see Fame on Fire, Magnolia Park, and Thornhill all headline shows. And again, this year so far with live shows has been fantastic. There hasn't been one disappointment. There hasn't been one letdown. There hasn't been one issue with any of the shows that I've seen. When I look at that stretch, I think Fame on Fire is one that really impressed me more than I anticipated. But the energy that Fame on Fire has in their live shows is unbelievable. Magnolia Park has exploded into superstardom. There is no other way to describe it. I got to see them there, and I got to see them a little bit at Warped Tour. And the presence that they have just in the scene in general is so commanding, and you can see that other bands look to them as mentors. You can see that other bands look to them as giants in the scene. And that's really cool to see because I feel like Magnolia Park is still even rising as we speak, but the fact that they are already kind of seen as scene stalwarts is amazing. And I even got to see a more dialed back full band version of the Youth Fountain Tour with Gabe Woodrow. And that was a cool thing too. I mean, the small venues are something that I think this scene has really captured so well. It doesn't have to be a big arena. It doesn't have to be a big stage. These artists are willing to go to wherever to just play some shows, play to their fans. If they sell out the room, they sell out the room. If they don't, that's okay. They're still going to play it out and play it with the most energy that they physically have possible. And so that's something that's really cool about this scene that continues to show up as I go to shows. So with live shows, I'm really excited for the end of this year. There's a new concert venue opening in my area that's getting a ton of different tours coming through. And I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to getting out to more shows this fall and being able to share those with you guys. Moving into the top albums of the year so far, it has been a really strong year for album releases. We've had some of our absolute heaviest hitters in the scene release albums. We've had some of our middle tier on the rise bands release albums. We've had newcomers. We've had people that are unknown or they're shorter albums. So we're going to start off with my top 5 of the year so far, and this is in no particular order. This is just my top 5 so far this year. First off, we have Magnolia Park with Vamp. That album has been one that has really kind of defined the beginning of the year for me, and I have a feeling as we get into the fall time with the vampire feeling and the darker vibes, that's going to be an album that blows up for me. Cursed by Paleface Swiss is another one that I just keep finding myself going back to and playing over and over again. And I think it's because we have such a heavy, different type of screaming going on in this album. And then at the very end, we get the River of Sorrows track that is just a gorgeous kind of ender that just sets us back to reality. We aren't as amped up as we've been throughout this whole album with all the screaming and the energy. It takes us back down to kind of that level playing field. Afterglow by Sleep Theory has most recently just absolutely exploded into my top albums of the year. And this album from Sleep Theory is a perfect example of why I love listening to albums, because the singles from Sleep Theory were great, but there are tracks on that album, Afterglow, Words Are Worthless, Gravity, that may not have been singles, or if they were singles a long time ago, that have just really hit a chord and struck a note with me. And they're ones that you may not have paid attention to if you were just, single hunting for this band. They may not be ones that you listen to. And especially when some of those tracks that I mentioned start off a little slower, if that doesn't have that energy that you're looking for right away, you might skip it. But one of my favorite albums that I've listened to so far. Even in Arcadia by Sleep Token, this is one that is kind of right on the fringe of my top albums so far. It's right there with Spiritbox and Architects, which are albums that I would consider coming from our heavy hitters in the scene, but I just have them in such heavy rotation that the three of those albums kind of get interchanged a lot, and it's hard for me to pick a favorite at that time. And then my number 5 album, or the 5th album that I'm talking about here, is New Delhi by Bloodywood. If you're looking for something fresh, if you're looking for something new and something extremely unique, you are not going to find anything better than New Delhi by Bloodywood. That album is one that I've been talking about for a long time. It's one that I have really connected with in terms of the new instrumentation that we're hearing and just a new sound that we hear from this band. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they continue to do. And even though those are my top 5, there are other albums that have really stood out to me so far this year. We have albums that were like really short, but also effective. And I'm not saying short in terms of like content, just short in terms of they were only like 7-8 tracks maybe. The new album from Friendz Circle, Jersey Fresh, is one that you guys know I really enjoy, and it's one that has one of my favorite songs in the year, Haunted Houses, on that. Acres is another one that has released a new album that's kind of shorter, but it definitely stands out above some of the other albums that I've heard so far this year. It is one that I find myself going back to, very similar to that Paleface album. We also have albums from bands that I would consider risers in the scene, or maybe a little bit unknown in the scene, whether that's Bridge the Gap or Good Hangs or Dear Seattle or even Knox to a degree. Those 4 albums are ones that have something for everybody. It's not just one specific genre, and they all have such strong potential to be in a year-end list for me. And then we also have that middle of the road, like they're kind of popular already, but also still building that fan base in terms of, getting to that next level. Albums in terms of True North or 408 or Thornhill, all albums that are really strong this year, and they are kind of that perfect gateway for someone that is looking for a new band to really fall in love with. I think if you go to True North or you go to 408 or you go to Thornhill, those are going to be bands that you're going to fall in love with if you listen to these new albums. While all of the albums have been really good this year, a lot of artists are tending to go towards the EP route. And so we're going to do a top EP section here as well. And so for EPs, I'm going to give you my top 3, again, in no particular order, but these are my top 3 so far. The first one being Sachi 6. I think that is an absolutely perfect EP. I don't think there is a single song on that EP that has not been played 20 plus times for me already. I think when we look at that like dark, tortured sound, Sachi 6 has it nailed with this. Mayday Parade kind of sits in this top level too, because for right now, the only thing we have is this EP, and I think it's such a nostalgic feel from Mayday, whether it's Natural or whether it's By the Way. All of these tracks kind of hit that checkbox of what we were looking for from a nostalgic sound standpoint. But I'm listing it as a question mark in this top EP space because if they release another one and they combine them together to make an album, we may have an album to talk about instead of an EP. And my last top EP out of the top 3 is Lauren Babic. I still cannot get over how good the track I'm Bored is. That is a track that absolutely is going to be in my top played, in my top tracks of the year. There's a ton to like about Lauren's sound. There's other really strong EPs this year. It's not just those 3. Amira Elfeky is one that I've touted a lot and a person that I see really blowing up in this scene over the next year or so. Internet Friendz had a strong EP. Tarnish had a strong EP. All Systems Go had a strong EP. Sam Hauge had a strong EP. There are so many larger bodies of work in either EP form or album form that we've already gotten so far this year that makes me really excited for the end of this year to look towards it and say, is there anybody that's going to dethrone any of these albums or any of these EPs and really kind of plant the flag and say, I'm going to be the top album of this year? Because right now, I can't sit here and tell you that I have a very favorite so far this year. There is no way that I have that right now. And finally, we're moving into some of my favorite tracks of the year. I'm going to list a couple of them out. We're going to talk about some new finds. We're going to talk about some heavy hitters from bands that have been around the scene so far. And then we'll talk about what to look ahead at. So, listing some of these off, the Annexation of Puerto Rico by Gabe Woodrow is absolutely one of my favorite tracks this year. It fits his sound perfectly, and it is a perfect kind of mid-tempo track to really get people introduced to Gabe and his sound and also his lyricism. Trade Winds by Life on Standby is one of the first tracks that I added to a playlist this year, and it has still maintained that momentum that it had at the beginning of the year. End Like This by Call Me Nightly, Let Go by RODERIK, Forgive by Shoreline, Tarnish by Youth Fountain, In Another Life by Nick Karcher all kind of check those boxes on everything that I look for when it comes to a new track, and they've been ones that have just continued to kind of rise up the ranks, along with songs like Do Me Like That from The Paradox, Release Me by Cherie and Amour, Sinking In by Stmnts, At First Sight by Heartbent. Those last three tracks that I talked about, the Cherie and Amour, the Stmnts, and the Heartbent tracks, they're all bands that are local to me, and that is amazing to see those types of tracks show up here. You know, a lot of people will say, oh, you're only listening to them because you're nearby, and that's not the case. I mean, for fuck's sake, the Cherie and Amour album was produced by Skylar Accord. There is not a shortage of interest in these bands. So these artists are going to continue to get more and more popular, and I think knowing about that now is great. We also have new tracks from Maybsomeday and The Pretty Wild that there's a bunch of different tracks from them that have come out so far this year that it's really hard to pick a favorite. And the same thing goes for Left on Red. Now, Left on Red is a band that I found at the very beginning of this year with Pyroceniac, which is what we so cleverly referred to as Sneezecore. But it's not just that, it's also their Spongecore track, which is Gaslight. And I don't know which one of those two tracks I like better. I think they're kind of on an even playing field right now, but those are some of my favorite tracks right away. And it hasn't just been artists that I know, it's been some new finds for me as well. The discovery of Falling Through Faith was a really cool one for me this year. They've already released 2 albums, but I think my favorite track so far is Lost Without You. And the same goes for a band called You Over Me. Why Does It Get to Be You has that perfect late 2000s, early 2010s, energetic pop punk feel with just a touch of screaming in there too to kind of amplify that energy. And then up from here is another band. No Way Out has exploded onto the scene for me and has really become a classic track for me. It's one of my favorites of the year, and it's already been added to one of my all-time favorite playlists. And then to round out the discussion here about best tracks of the year so far, we got to talk about some of the heavy hitters in terms of bands that have been around for a long time and are releasing something, and then we're going to touch on one band as we start to look ahead. Dayseeker's new track, Pale Moonlight, is absolutely spectacular. Fit for a King's Lonely God is great. And as much as I didn't love the new Day to Remember album, All My Friends still, for some reason, is super infectious, super catchy, and it's one that I keep going back to. In this section, you heard me talk about Dayseeker, who gets ready to release an album later this year, which is one of the things that I really want to look ahead to. But another band that I want to talk about in this looking ahead section is President. Fearless has been one of my favorite songs since it came out. It has such a good sound to it. It's a little bit different in terms of things that we've heard in the past. And so it gives it that unique sense of sound and that unique vibe. Obviously, people are going to be intrigued by President because of the masks and because of the sound, but I'm very interested to see this debut EP in the end of September from President, to see what the sound kind of gets pulled into as one full body of work. I'm also looking forward to albums from Hot Mulligan and from I Prevail. Hot Mulligan is always going to be at the top of the list when it comes to things that I'm looking forward to, because you never know what Hot Mulligan's going to do, but you always have this feeling that it's going to be something spectacular, even if it's unexpected. As far as my excitement for I Prevail, I am cautiously optimistic. Obviously, we have gotten the news this year that Brian Berkheiser is out as vocalist of I Prevail, and we've started to see what the vocals sound like without him there. So far, so good. So far, so good. I have not been disappointed with Violent Nature or the latest track that's come out. I cannot for the life of me remember the name, but so far, so good from I Prevail. And I think this is really interesting because so many people love Brian Berkheiser and love what he brought to I Prevail. So it'll be very interesting to see how this album comes out and what type of response this album receives. As far as tours that I'm looking forward to, I think the co-headliner with Invent Animate and Silent Planet is something that's really going to be fun. I think Poppy going on tour is going to be something that's really intriguing, as well as the tour with From Ashes to New, Magnolia Park. I think that's a really exciting one. As for me, I'm really excited for something that's local in Maryland, the Skullhouse Rock Fest, that's going to have a lot of different bands: Jack the Underdog, Lolitz Leah, The Haunt, Walk on Mars. There's a bunch of different bands over a 3-day span that I'm really looking forward to. And so it's another festival. It's in the fall time, so hopefully it won't be as hot, but hopefully also not super cold, because I don't know how well I do with that. But I'm looking forward to that. And then the final thing I'm looking forward to at the end of this year is to expect the unexpected from one of the bands that has just been in the scene forever. I feel like almost inevitably every year we get some sort of wild release or some sort of unexpected return from a band. And, you know, it's not just going to be something like the Starting Line releasing a new album. We know that's coming. Yes, it's been 15, 18 years, however fucking long it's been. But that's not really something that's going to give us shock value. I'm talking about a new album from Blink-182, a new album announcement from My Chemical Romance, a second announcement of an album or a second album from Sleep Token this year. Something along those lines that's going to really kind of shake the foundation of the scene and say, hey, this is something new that we need to pay attention to. I think that's definitely going to happen. That wraps it up for us here on the Matrix Music Review Podcast mid-year check-in. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know in the comments. Let me know on Instagram who your favorite albums of the year have been so far. What's your favorite track been so far? Have you been to any shows? What's been your favorite live experience with a band this year? Send all those over to me so I can take a look at them and see what you guys have been up to. And as for me, as you know, all the links to the are in the description of this episode for everything you need from me. Follow me over on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Matrix Music Review. Like the playlist, give it a thumbs up, a heart, a comment on Apple Music or Spotify. Head over to Spotify and save the playlist, Control-Alt-Save 25 to your library. Head over to YouTube, subscribe on the YouTube channel, Matrix Music Review, all of those things. And I will be back very soon with more podcasts, more music, and more content, and introducing you to your new favorite band. I will see you guys next time.